Alright, we're back. So I'm applying a first coat of seasoning here. Again, as I did previously, I'm using flaxseed oil. I got the burner on max. I cleaned the heck out of it several times using Dawn dish soap and a scrubbing brush initially. And then after 3 times of cleaning it with the scrubbing brush, went to just a dish rag and went at it from there. Cleaned it a couple times with the dish rag, rinsed the heck out of it, and here we go. When I put it on the skillet, I could see that it had slightly golden hue to it, which told me that it was actually starting to rust. Hopefully we won't have an issue with that. I got the first coat of oil on there. It is now 9:08 p.m. and we're going to carry on and see how long this takes, see how long it takes me to season this thing. It's only been on there for a couple minutes and I'm starting to see a faint amount of smoke coming off, so that's good. Let's wipe some more oil on here. And the key here is applying the thinnest layer possible of oil. If you see oil pooling up, that's a problem. The surface will not be smooth if you see oil pooling up. It'll kind of look like little divots. Hate to break it to you guys, but I gotta turn the exhaust fan on because it's gonna start getting real smoky here. So pardon the noise, but there's really no option. So you can see it's hot enough that it's kind of burning the paper towel here already. This is always an exciting part of refinishing a skillet because it's where the rubber meets the road in a sense. The only step that remains after this is to put food in it. So now I can really see the surface starting to turn a golden hue. Let's zoom in for you guys here. Yeah, that's better. See if we can focus. That's about right. Yeah, now we're starting to get some color. That's looking good. You got to do this kind of fast and furious because it is stinking hot, even with oven mitts. That's looking really good. I'm going to move the camera over to the side because it's kind of in my way. You guys see all right? Good, thank you. Color's really starting to come in nicely now. So is the smoke. Kind of the pain in the neck of this is I've got a really good feeling that I'm going to have a fine layer of smoke on my camera lens. When it's all said and done, I'm gonna have to clean off. But you know what? For YouTube, I'll do anything, right? Almost anything. Don't take that the wrong way. Wow, that's beautiful. That is really, really pretty. That is looking really, really good. Yeah, so I think it's totally fine just using 80 grit sandpaper for finishing a skillet. I don't think going up to the hundreds is necessary at all, because aesthetically this looks great. And I can't feel those scratches when I run my finger over them, so I'm abundantly confident that there won't be a performance issue with using a coarser grit sandpaper. But man, look at that smoke. I'm sure that's coming in on the camera. It's getting hot. But it is looking really, really good. Man, look at the paper towel there. That's getting burnt good. Looking over the skillet, kind of using the light on my microwave as a reflection. I'm not seeing any cooling up at all, which, truth be told, when I seasoned this skillet last time, there was a couple spots that I didn't do a very good job on. But this time around, I think we're in really good shape. I'm going to turn the heat down a little. And at this point, I don't see smoke coming off anymore, so that tells me that last coat that I applied is burned off, and so it's time to put more on. Here we go. And that's what I look for. I look for the smoke to disappear, because once the smoke's gone, that means that whatever volatile compounds exist in that oil, that flaxseed oil, it tells me they're gone. They've been cooked off. Alright, so that paper towel is done. Gotta get another one here. So even through these oven mitts, this is hot work. So you guys got to be careful. You take this up on your own. We're dealing with some serious temperature here. So I don't see any smoke. I'm going to start on the walls here just to make sure that we got a generous application on the walls of the skillet. Now I'll move down to the bottom, because in the previous applications here I've been applying it down to the bottom first. I want to make sure that we get good uniform coverage on the skillet. So I started at 908, it is now 915. I'm going to reduce the heat. And yeah, just one application, that paper towel is stinking burnt. So I've been at this for about 8 minutes now, that's it. It's really not that bad, it's not a huge time commitment, and we're already looking really good. Don't see any smoke, so here we go, here's another coat. I'm liking what I see. The alternative method for seasoning, which I used on my first cast iron refinishing job, was to bake it in the oven at 450 degrees. That was a total pain in the neck. I mean, yeah, it worked. But the problem was energy efficiency, if you want to take it to that. So the way that worked was you buff on a very thin layer of oil, kind of like I'm doing right here, and you put the skillet in the oven upside down for an hour to 90 minutes and bake it at 450 to 500 degrees. That's just one coat. Just one. So you have to repeat that multiple times. So you're talking a 4, 5, even 6 hour commitment to season your skillet. That is ludicrous, if you ask me. Right now I've got 9 minutes and my skillet is looking great. I should get this paper towel wet. We don't need to spontaneously combust here. I don't really know how much more I'm going to do. turn the burner off here. Kind of let that heat soak for a hot second. Grabbing another paper towel here because those other two were smoking. So I put them in the sink and hit them with water, so we don't need fires in the kitchen. I mean, unintentional fires. When I throw concentrated whiskey on a steak and then tip it to the burner to get fired, yeah, that's totally cool. But we don't need to get paper starting on fire because then the smoke alarms will go off. Now I'm going to do, let's go ahead and buff this on. Yep, we're still at smoking point here. Wow, that is really hot. It's like the heat is really soaked into the handle. It's kind of a downside to these Lodge skillets is that the handle, it's got a lot of mass to it, and it's not very long, so that ultimately equates to a lot of heat retention in the handle and hot hands if you're not careful. There's really nothing I can do about that. Wow. But I think under normal circumstances, you're not getting your skillet nearly this hot. This is looking really, really good. I mean, aesthetically, it's even more beautiful than when I seasoned it the first time, because at this point I have a nice uniform scratch pattern from sanding it by hand. And I didn't pay attention to time on that, but I really didn't spend, I don't feel like I spent an hour sanding it, so it really wasn't that much of a time commitment. And the results, I'm really happy with the results. So I think it was well worth it. The angle grinder approach that I did to begin with, I don't feel like that was in vain. I don't think it was a waste of time, because the condition that the skillet was in prior to hitting it with the angle grinder and Scotch Brite pad thing, it was super rough, and the angle grinder took that down substantially. For me to have done what the angle grinder did with that Scotch Brite pad just by hand sanding it, it would have taken a friggin' eternity. So ultimately, to start over again, to do this whole job again from the very beginning, I would just use the wire wheel like I started with, to get all the creosote off of the bottom. You know, that's our artifact of using a wood burning skillet in the past. And then I'd use the same wire wheel for getting all of the seasoning off of the interior of the skillet. And then from there I'd use the angle grinder with the Scotch Brite pad thing, using the coarse ones just to really kind of level the surface out in case it wasn't level to begin with. And then I would not season it at that point, but instead I would go to hand sanding, and just with 80 grit sandpaper. I really don't think there's a need to go any finer than that. From my observations here, it seems like it's really important to shut the burner off every once in a while, just to let the whole surface get a little more uniform in temperature. Because with the burner on, you're obviously getting hot spots and cooler spots. You know, it's obviously hot where the flame's hitting it, and not as hot where the flame isn't hitting it. And then just based on thermodynamics, the basics of equilibrium, you shut the burner off, the entire temperature is going to tend toward thermal equilibrium, so the whole temperature, the temperature of the surface throughout will be more uniform. And also I think it's beneficial in the sense of letting the seasoning kind of build a little bit, because when the skillet is so hot that it smokes immediately after applying it, I don't know, it doesn't seem like the application is allowed to get as thick perhaps as it should. I'm kind of speculating here and theorizing, because I'm not a pro at this. I'm not trying to pretend to be a pro at this. I'm just observing and reporting what I see here. On the lineup, and I don't know that I'll do videos on them because it might be just redundant, but on the lineup I've got a friend of mine. She was actually my realtor, sold me this house. She's a very nice middle-aged woman who lives locally, and she and I have become really good friends, hanging out with her and her husband and her kids, her children are about my age. She gave me 2 skillets. One is a Griswold, and the other one, for the life of me I can't remember the name, but I think it starts with a W. And they belong to her mother, and the Griswold, based on some of the signature characteristics engraved or cast into the piece, it's dated to the 1920s, so it's a 100-year-old skillet, and it looks like it's 100 years old. It's very obvious that it was used on a wood-burning stove, and because there's a heavy creosote buildup on the bottom of it, not nearly as bad as this skillet was, but it's definitely there. The other one, you can tell that the other one never saw wood, because the bottom of the skillet is essentially perfectly fine. The main difference between the two is that the other one, the one that starts with a W, it's not as smooth, so it's not as rough as a modern day Lodge cast iron skillet is, but it's not as smooth as the Griswold that she gave to me also. And hey there YouTube, I got cut off in my train of thought back there because it turns out my camera has file size limit due to European tax regulations capping video footage file size to 4 gigabytes at the time of this camera's manufacture back in 2011, 2012. So anyway, as I was saying, was my realtor had given me this couple of skillets, and there was one that started with a W, which actually I'll just go ahead and show you it. I'll show you both of them. This is the one that I think starts with a W or something like that. I don't know the name of it. But there were some signature characteristics, namely the bottom of the handle coming to a sharp point, which is actually kind of cool. The Made in USA up here is a reference for the era in which it was produced, because I think that was legislated as a requirement for foundries in the 1960s. And so if you don't see Made in USA on a cast iron skillet, it was made prior to the 60s, which is why I consider this guy to be a 1950s era. But here's the surface of that skillet. It's not quite as smooth as like the 3-notch Lodge that I started with here, nor is it quite as smooth as the Griswold. But still it's far finer than a modern day Lodge. But anyhow, and then I'll show you the Griswold one. The thing is, and this is kind of cool, my realtor friend gave me these to refinish so she can try her hand at using them, and she's going to pay me for it. So I'm actually making money off of a hobby. It doesn't really get any better than that. Right, so this is the Griswold. These are very highly valued skillets. This one being from the 1920s, and it's a number 3 size skillet. She pulled up screenshots on eBay, and people are asking $140 to $150 for the skillet in a condition like this, not restored or anything. So that's pretty substantial. This isn't a big skillet. This is, you know, the size of my hand, and $140 for it. I mean, yikes. So my realtor has had these skillets for a very long time, but clearly she hasn't been using them because she's always been intimidated by the high maintenance mentality of cast iron skillets, and she admits that in her past she's thrown them in the dishwasher and they rusted and were all nasty, and so she gave up on them. And so it's just a matter of, you know, education on how to properly take care of your utensils, your cooking-ware. So anyway, back to our skillet here. This guy turned out absolutely beautifully. Sorry you got cut off for the you know, during the seasoning process, but I'm satisfied, or I'm pretty convinced that you guys have a good understanding of how to do it now. I have not seen any YouTube videos myself on stovetop seasoning. So maybe I'm the first, or maybe I just haven't found one. But anyway, I figured I'd give that to you guys, and the finished product looks absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's better than how it turned out last time I refinished it, because at this point now I have a very, very nice uniform scratch pattern on the skillet. It turned out just aesthetically beautiful, and because I used an 80 grit abrasive, I'm pretty confident that it will retain the seasoning better than it did before. So here's my first attempt at re-seasoning an iron skillet. This is a smaller one. This is a number 5 Lodge. I should sand a handle up because I think it would look cool. Maybe some other time. But anyway, this guy, I love how it looks. It's not the sort of copper look like the other one. It's a little more like tarnished copper, I guess you could say, like an old penny. But this has held up really well. I mentioned this in a previous video. I finished this one hand sanded at 320 grit, and there were spots of the skillet where the seasoning kind of came off, but very small areas here and there, like less than the size of a quarter. In re-seasoning it and using it, it's been fine. So I'm abundantly confident that having sanded my other skillet there, the number 7 at 80 grit, it should hold up just fine. So that's what I got for now. Oh, and I don't remember if I showed you guys this one. I don't think I did. This is my baby. That's a 1 egg skillet right there. It's perfect for making English muffins. I bought this when I was at an outdoor goods store with my sister. Largely I bought it for kicks because the thing's way too cute to pass up. So I decided, you know, for the heck of it, I'm going to sand it up, refinish it, season it, and yeah, this is, well, they call it a number 4, but it's got MS on there, which I'm thinking means miniature skillet, because this one is 5SK. You can see that right there. And that 3-notch Lodge, which is larger, is the number 7. And Lodge will tell you that the numbering refers to the size of stovetop burner that was required, because back in the era of wood burning stoves, there were the burners were in sections. They were concentric rings, and you took off just a little tiny ring if you wanted to expose fire. If you wanted to cook on a small skillet like this little guy, you took off a larger ring, a larger number, like a 5 or a 7 if you wanted to cook on a different skillet. So you had burners that were appropriate for the size of skillet that you've got. We don't have that anymore. Looking at my stovetop here, my burner all the way in the back right corner is tiny, and the one right in front of it is humongous. And then the other two on the left side of the range are both like medium size. But when I finished this guy, I took my Dremel and engraved my initials JD up there, and a date on the bottom, which isn't that easy to read. I guess I should maybe redo it a little bit deeper, but it's 19th of July 2020. Figured for posterity. But I use this every once in a while for cooking up an egg to have a little English muffin breakfast sandwich. It works absolutely beautifully for that. So that's it for this evening. Again, really happy with how that seasoning take 2 turned out. So it's not all bad that I had to redo this skillet, because I'm far happier with the condition that it's in now than before, and I'm confident that the seasoning will hold up. If it doesn't, well, I'll let you guys know, and I'm going to be forward and honest with you, and at that point I'd probably just go for the next course abrasive, which is I think 60 grit or something like that. But based on the 320 grit of the other one, I don't think that'll be necessary. I think this will be fine. So I'm going to use it tomorrow. I'm going to cook up steak. I've got ribeye, and we will see how that goes. Alright, stay tuned. Thank you for watching, and like and subscribe, and be safe and having a good night.